all have a car payment. At one point, we have all had a car payment. Mm-hmm. We have to make money in order to make that car payment.
Yeah.
So just like we have to make money in order to make a mortgage, why not find a mortgage that works within our budget, our livelihood, and add some money to that like it were a car payment? Or take equivalent to a car payment and go invest it in the stock market or mutual fund or something. And if you had, let's say you have a car payment for 15 years, at the end, you really have probably a car at 300, let's say at $350. You have a car that I could probably find on Craigslist for $5,000. And maybe at one point it was nicer or whatever, but you put so much money into these cars that looked nice at one time, whatever. Had you taken that same amount of money and put it in the stock market, in 15 years, you're going to have over $100,000.
Hi, everybody. Joseluiz Morales. Welcome back to the Morales Group Show. This is episode number 54. Today, we've got a very special guest. His name is Caleb Lopez. He's based out of San Luis Obispo. He's a local investor / developer. And today's topic is going to be how to retire early through real estate investing. So this is definitely a show that you don't want to miss. Caleb's got a lot of experience, and welcome to the show, Caleb. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very good. Thank you.
Good, man. So I'd like to start off just by if I asked you, who is Caleb Lopez? How would you describe yourself?
Caleb Lopez is a kid that grew up with every opportunity, but no opportunity. I think that really part of growing up in the U.S. is really that. I think right now with the social fabric and everything else that's going on, we hear a lot of privilege, and I think that my story flies in the face of that. I don't know that there's such thing as privilege. I think that we live in an area, in a land really of opportunity, and my parents were farm workers. They both work in the fields, and I was never handed anything. Grew up, we didn't always know if food was going to be on the table or not, and didn't have someone to pay my college, didn't have someone to, and so it created a need to put things together for myself, and so I did that and started young in construction. And then I competed also in MMA, wrestling, Muay Thai, boxing, some other things. Been an airplane pilot. I've gone through the police academy. I've done just these different things to see, because there's so much opportunity. I've had every opportunity to do all these things. We all do. And so now one thing that I kind of decided early was that my parents worked hard their whole lives, and they still do. I didn't want to. I didn't want to have to wake up. I saw my dad wake up since I was a child at 3:30 in the morning to go to work, and I decided early that I didn't want to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying about that same mentality. My dad's at that point as well too, where he's worked his whole life. I look at real estate as a way of maybe not going in that direction. So a lot of people, man, they look at real estate as a vehicle. They hear that there's no better vehicle to become a millionaire, a multimillionaire, a billionaire than real estate. What made you want to get into real estate investing? And tell us about how that journey ended up starting off as maybe like doing your first deal.
Well, I definitely did try a few different things. Now, I started, like I said, I started a construction company when I was very young, and I had a partner. And so I was able to have a little bit of money to put into a couple of different things. And I realized quickly that it doesn't take a lot of money to invest, really, in most things. It doesn't take much. And so my first real estate deal was a thing where I decided that the market had already kind of jumped, and I was 21 when I bought my first house. and the market had already started to really jump. And I decided that I was going to need to go on a very aggressive savings plan in order to pay for my down payment. I made a budget of $5 a day for food, and I actually stuck to between $5 and $7 a day for food. I made these very strict, budget plan so that I could save very aggressively, and I did. And with that, I was able to come up with my down payment. And at 21, that was when I bought my first house. And I did something, I guess they call house hacking now. But the place had a little studio that was kind of built out that was attached, and I rented out some rooms. And with that, I was able to pay my complete mortgage. And I think I even made a couple $100. And so I lived there for free and tried to start saving for the next one.
So, it's funny, like sometimes like I hear of people that they want to do what you did, but they don't want to sacrifice anything. They think that just by like you had to sacrifice, literally you made a food plan where you were sacrificing a little bit to get to your goal. And a lot of people want to get to the goal, but they don't want to have to do what needs to happen to get to that goal, which is to sacrifice something. Sometimes you have to give up something in order to get something in return, which is awesome. So that first deal that you ended up buying, what year was this? What was the market like at that point? Were you scared? Were you nervous at all? Had you read any books at that time? What did that look like?
It was a thing where I knew that I needed to get in because real estate was really starting to skyrocket. The house that I bought, just had I bought it maybe 2 years earlier, I could have got for in the 150s, and I ended up paying $350 for it a couple years later. So I saw a definite rise, and then I did a little bit of research. Mostly, I was working for a lot of people that were also investors, and I just had knowledge around me, and we all really do have knowledge around. It's just a matter of looking for it. So I kind of sought out some people and made it almost like I was compiling information, and people love to share their information, their experiences. And so I started interviewing a couple of people who had done something similar to what I wanted to do. I wanted to buy a house, and I wanted to, buy several. So did a little bit of research, found out that both markets on both sides in LA and San Francisco were so extreme, and the spikes, and that this was something that I could actually get into. And so that was kind of what I had done to start.
Yeah. And there's so much information online now. I mean, like if you want to invest into real estate, there's podcasts like this. There's so much information, sometimes even a little bit too much information. So what is your investment strategy? Do you mainly buy and hold? Do you flip some properties? Do you mainly do development? What is your strategy behind real estate?
I try to do all of it. Now, what I'll do is I'll go in to a project, and I'll look at a project, and I say, okay, can I flip this project and make money? If I can flip this project and make money, can I buy and hold it and make money? Can I, with my holding costs, any kind of upfront investment for remodel, rental, can my rental cover the mortgage? And then the third question is, how is this going to affect my livelihood now? So with those three things, I go in, and if it checks every box, that's typically when I buy, because I don't want to jump into a market or buy a place that I count on flipping, and I found out I can't flip, right? And then but the rental numbers don't make sense. So I run numbers on it a couple of different ways, and if it checks the boxes, then it's like mutual funds. We don't, just day trading's gambling. So I'm not interested in gambling big numbers. So mutual funds, you go into these big, large portfolios, and you buy, a spread. So I like to make sure that I'm kind of purchasing across the spread.
So it looks like you're mitigating your risk by saying, what is worst case scenario? That's something that I do as well too, is what is worst case scenario? Like if I end up not being able to flip this property, could I hold on to this property and will it pay itself off? Or will it hurt me? Will I be in a position? I see some people get into flips that are a little bit above their league. They get into like $1 million or $2 million flip, and then they're not able to sell it. Their expectations are to make 500,000 or $1 million. They're not able to sell it. Now they're stuck with a property that doesn't cash flow, and they're stuck.
And their holding costs are going to sink. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one of the analysis that I run on my properties as well too. Whenever I'm flipping, it's like, if I hold on to this, if I'm not able to flip it, will I still be able to hold on to it, and will it help me or hurt my portfolio? So that's pretty awesome. So let me ask you this: how are you buying most of your properties? Or because I know that there's a lot of people out there with not a lot of money, or they're trying to get into the real estate investment. Are you financing these through cash? Are you doing equity line of credits? Are you getting loans from the bank? Or is it different for different properties? And how did that vary from the beginning to now as your portfolio has grown?
So what I think a lot of people don't realize is that as we mature, when we're in school, there's not a class that tells us, here's how to grow up. And I feel like I wish there was. I wish there was something that was mandatory, was considered a requirement to graduate high school, maybe, that says, here's how you grow up. You establish credit, you purchase a vehicle, and then you purchase a house. You build your credit with credit cards. You don't spend more than you make. I wish there was someone that would say this. But there's not. So I'm gonna try to be that person, I guess, that says this is all part of just growing up. We figure out, we get a car because we need to get to work. We need to get to and from. But we don't buy a house oftentimes because we don't realize we have to. It's important for our own stability. Mm-hmm. And it's also something we all should live to leave a legacy. I mean, life is not just about us. I think maybe when you're younger, you're distracted and feel like maybe it is. And even if it is just all about you, why not build something you can be proud of? I'm not married. I don't have any kids. And I'm just very excited to leave all of this stuff to nieces, to nephews, to whatever. You got to think about things bigger than yourself. So in financing, you figure it out. On the front end, oftentimes you could get into a place with 3.5%. 3.5% is not that much. Leverage your parents, your friends, whatever, or just leverage yourself. Work harder. You know, I've worked 70-hour weeks since I was probably 20 years old. Mm-hmm. Literally up until maybe a year and a half ago. And I loved it. You just learn to love it. You're on a mission. You're on a grind. Now I can work 5-hour weeks or 0-hour weeks. It's just a matter of saying, okay, this is what I need to do and this is what I'm going to do. But 3.5%, you could get in your first place with 3.5%. Then you can take that place, put some sweat equity into it, remodel it, fix it up, make it nice, and then pull some equity out of it at a super low rate lately. Get in another place, but also keep working. You just obviously we all want to enjoy our life during a certain time and not let things get away from us. But we're going to have experiences regardless, and just because we're working hard doesn't mean we're robbing ourselves of experience.
What would you say is more important? Because I feel like a lot of people are limited by the fact they say, I don't have any money, therefore I can't buy something. What would you say is more important, the knowledge or basically the money?
I love when people say they don't have any money, they can't buy anything. If it's truly a person that is unemployed and has been able to not actually get a job, then I'll say, okay, work harder on getting a job. Yeah. If you say you have a job and you're not making enough money, then one of a couple of things is not happening. Either you've not been there long enough, or you're not asking for a raise as you should. You should be asking for a raise every single year, and demanding a raise, and making yourself important so that you need that raise, or so that you But also, most of the time, what I find is people saying they don't have the money because they're not willing to make the sacrifices you were talking about earlier. I think one of the things for me, I learned about making sacrifices when I was younger in teams and sports, and I would encourage kids to do the same thing. I wrestled, and there was one time I remember specifically when I needed to lose 15 pounds in 24 hours. And I was not a real big kid at the time, and I was pretty densely muscular, but I had to do it because it was for a national tournament, and that was not an option. To me, it was not an option. And I did it. And I think that experience really taught me that, for me, that when we decide to do something, we can do it. And that also helped later when I put myself on a very aggressive eating plan or a meal plan. I know what it's like to go hungry. And you know what? If you're so dedicated to something that a little bit of hunger pain doesn't bother you, then you're dedicated to it.
Yeah.
But if you're not willing to make a sacrifice, I don't know. That might be where the buck stops. It's a matter of being willing to grow up a little bit.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question is there's a show right now called Undercover Billionaire. And basically they select the billionaire, they put him in a place where he's never been to. They give him $100 and a vehicle. And basically the whole point of the show is for him to build $1 million business in 90 days. Without any contacts, they have to change his name. Nobody knows who he is. And they basically put the billionaires in that situation. And the whole aspect of it is, what's more important? Like, is it having the money, or is it just having the knowledge? And what is a result of it is that all these billionaires are able to build a $1 million business in 90 days, which proves that you don't necessarily need the money in order to build a real estate career. You don't need the money to build a contracting business. You have to have a vision for what you want, and you have to be able to have somewhat of the knowledge and the skills to go after that. And if you had that, that's all you basically need.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I was asking that, because that show is, if you haven't watched it, it'll go right up the alley, man. So what is your let's fast forward now. Like, what does your real estate portfolio look like now? And what is approximate in terms of cash flow that you would say that maybe you make on a month-to-month basis from the real estate portfolio, if you're open to sharing that information?
So I had a mentor who had come from China to the U.S. with no money, as a younger woman, and she had 2 kids, single mom. And she, from that, she had built an amazing career, an amazing real estate portfolio. She had just kind of kicked butt. And her and I were talking, and this was kind of in the beginning of this, as building my real estate portfolio. And she told me, she said, "Caleb, here's what you need to do." She said, "There's 2 things in life that are very important. One of them is time, and the other is experience." She says, so time is not a renewable resource. You get it once. And experience, life is about experience. And so she encouraged me to plan to very aggressively compile 20 properties. 20 properties that made a minimum of $500 over the mortgage. And with that, to pay off a couple of those properties as quickly as I could with that extra $500. And with that money, it's simple math, you don't need to work anymore. And not only that, but then after a while, let's say in another 10, 15 years, maybe you sell 1 or 2 of those properties that are paid off. You have $1 million or more you can go play with, but now your time is yours. You're not linked or in any way tied to someone else's clock, to someone else's schedule. after that, your time is yours. And
Mhm.
you can have every experience you want, but also the experiences that will come with this journey of building this will be helpful in every other aspect of your life. And before she passed away, which was just not long ago, she told me, Caleb, when you get over 20, it's still going to be really fun. And you're still going to want to work 60, 70 hours a week. But I need you to stop. And you could still play. But after that, it all needs to feel like you're playing, you're just enjoying. You don't want to feel like you're working anymore. And so it was really quite an experience to hit that number.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just right after she passed, and everything has been so fresh. And I feel like it was really, really hard for me to push those brakes real hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like it was something that she told me to do, and I had to try. And it's starting to feel a little more normal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying to go quit your job or to do anything else, but the feeling that the time is yours, and I can now go have whatever experience I want, and all my time now belongs to me. I think that is an important one. And now I actually want to have kids, and I want to have a family, and I want to have all these things. And I think I'll get to enjoy that experience, the experience of kids, the experience of all these things in a different way than if I was tied down maybe to a job.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting, Caleb, what most people do is they start making additional $500 additional cash flow, $1,000, $5,000 a month, and what they do is they build up their expenses. So they buy the bigger house, or they buy the nicer car, or they buy this or that. What I'm hearing you saying is that instead of doing that, you bought your time back, which now with having time back, you're able to basically do what you want when you want without being tied. And to me, that's the biggest motivator for me as well too. I'm buying my time back. That's what I want. That's more important than the new Louis Vuitton or the new car or whatever, because now you have your time back, and now you can do whatever it is that you want. What I also heard you say is that the rule was $500 a month of positive cash flow. My dad, an immigrant, came to this country with nothing, and he had one rule, and his rule was to make $1,000 per property. But it wasn't like a complicated math formula. It wasn't like, what is the ROI? What is the cash on cash return?
Right.
What is that? Sometimes people complicate it. Like, it's so simple. Just whatever your payment is, find a property that will make you $500 additional than that. You do that enough time, you're going to build a portfolio. Then you start paying them off, and then it builds up. So, is that your main strategy for the buy and hold? Do you mainly buy for the cash flow that the asset produces, or do you buy based on like a neighborhood, like for appreciation, or is it like a combination of both things?
You can do a lot of different things. You can do, everyone always says buy the worst place in the best neighborhood. That's not always easy to find, but you can also look into neighborhoods. Let's say, for example, in Oakland, not all that long ago, I drove through Oakland. Maybe it was probably 5, 6 years ago now. I drove through Oakland, and I told my partner that I was with at the time, I said, you know what? If we weren't doing things aggressively and slow and in 5 cities, this is where I'd be doing it. And look at it now. Oh my God. So it's just a matter of driving around and looking at where can I make money? What neighborhoods, what are the depressed neighborhoods still? But things are changing. Things are coming around. So don't necessarily be afraid of certain neighborhoods. Don't necessarily so I wouldn't say that my target necessarily is always the $500. I would say that's a minimum. I won't buy a property if I can't do that. But that's not my target. My target is, okay, what does this neighborhood look like now? What can I make this neighborhood? If I change my house, who else is going to change around me? And of every single property I have, 100% of the time, when I've fixed my place up, then they will follow suit. 100% of the time, that's what happens. You start talking to the neighbors. You start saying, oh, yeah, I could send my painter over. When he's done here, he could head over there. And the next thing you know, the painter's done every house down the block, or maybe missed a few. Or my tile guy, oh, yeah, you want your shower? So it's just a matter of being part of a community. And I think that's one thing that I've really enjoyed with real estate is it's not just a way of making money for me. It's actually a way of becoming part of my community and buying these places, fixing these places up, dressing up neighborhoods that have been a certain way for years and years, and just kind of building in my community. And I get to feel real good about it.
Yeah. So how old are you now, Caleb?
I just turned 40.
Awesome, bro. So basically in a period of about 20, you basically bought a property a year to hold, basically. So from 21 to 40, it's 19 years, or is that kind of how it looked like? Or because
when I jumped into my first one, right after I bought that one, the market went up and went up and went up and went up. It just kept climbing. And every time I still stayed aggressive. I felt like I was being aggressive. I was still looking at properties. I was still trying to crunch numbers. But it wasn't until from 2003, basically, to 2012, almost 9 years later, that I finally got the next big product, or next big property. And from there, I felt like I just found one after another. Now, part of it also was that in that kind of span of time, I was also looking into it, just doing a lot of maybe less focused on real estate and more kind of focused on myself, building the company that I had started and doing all of this police academy thing, doing MMA and all of the boxing, whatever training. There's weekends, 5-hour weekends of training, and and that's a couple hours a day and whatnot. So my focus was, at that time, that wasn't necessarily my focus. But when I did really buckle down, then it just really, things started to change. And so I would say, again, over the last probably 5 years, maybe a couple of months, 5 years and a couple of months is when I've really, I think that's when I connected with my mentor. And my mentor really just broke it down for me. And she said, do you want to continue to work 70-hour weeks because you want kids, and kids in 70-hour weeks, you're not going to be around for it. So
that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if you started making a mindset shift right about that time when you met your mentor, if that is when you became more aggressive as it related to real estate investing.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like if you could find in life, we all look for partners, and I'm no therapist or anything else, but I think that we all look for partners, a husband, a wife, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that we make this big list of things, and I think that oftentimes we sell ourselves out of the market. But what I found with this person was, and she was my mentor, but she was my cheerleader. Everything I did, she was just so proud of. She was just so on it. She was so just excited about everything. And I think that we all need these people. And when you find these people in life, either make them your partner or make them your mentor, because those are the people that are going to make us productive. And so I think with her experience and with her kind of drive and focus, I was able to really hone in what I really wanted, and then I just went for it.
A lot of people say that when the student is ready, the mentor will come. How did you end up getting that mentor? And was it something that was just like by accident, or was it something that at that time in your life you were purposefully looking for somebody to kind of guide you, and how important of a fact has that played in your life?
You know, I think that maybe that there was some, it probably been, there had been enough time where I made enough financial kind of, I don't know if you want to call them mistakes, but I have enough financial experience to know that a different car, a different house, a different whatever didn't change anything for me. And I think when someone really does break down for you, that you get one chance at life, and life is really about those two things, your time and your experience. Then things start to come into focus a little more. And I was at a place already where I was making fairly decent money, but also her argument was, you've been making fairly decent money. What's between you and making really good money? Like, what's between what sits between you and making the amount of money that you think is crazy? And I thought, well, working a little harder and maybe working a little different. And that really is the difference for all of us. Working a little harder and working a little different. So, and with that, you know, she basically gave me this checklist of, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? So I think kind of with that little new toolbox I had, I thought, okay, well, now I'm not worried. Now I'm not saving up for another car or another vacation or another whatever. I'm saving to build an empire that I'm going to pass down to somebody else. And writing up that will not too long ago, and giving, you know, my favorite brother, 6 units, felt pretty good. And then just break them out into the brothers and everyone else, you know, just it feels good.
So you ended up giving a property to a family member, a brother.
Yeah. Well, so said in my will. So when I'm gone, but yeah.
Oh, in your will. Okay.
Yeah, when I'm gone, it's Christmas.
That's awesome, man. So it's funny because one of the things that I loved about what you were saying is that if you find somebody who is the type of person like your mentor was, to either make them a partner or make them your mentor, I think that it's all about exposure sometimes, just being exposed. Like sometimes we get so caught up in our environment that like we only see what we see because that's what we're around. But whenever you're exposed to somebody like your mentor, it kind of forces you to think a little bit differently and to think about things from a different perspective. And it sounds like that's what your mentor did for you. I remember there's this guy named Grant Cardone, and he started talking about apartments this, apartments that, like buying multi-unit. And at that time, I had only bought singles, doubles, triples, fourplexes. And then he put that idea in my head in 2017. And then I made a goal that I was going to buy an apartment complex. Sure enough, 2019, I ended up buying a 25 unit in Oxnard. And when I set the goal, I would have never imagined that it would have happened. But that mentor right there, or that person, that exposure, ended up, and that's cool. I used to make them a partner, make them your mentor, one of the two, but do whatever you can to keep them in your life, essentially, because they will push you and help you be a better version of yourself. So now I know that you got to the 20 properties now. What's the game plan now? Is it to pay them down? Is it to keep them, let them pay themselves off, or what's the strategy there?
So I used that formula kind of that she had proposed, with make at least $500 on them and use that money to pay them off. Don't use it to inflate your daily, expenses. And so I was able to pay a majority of them off already. And with that, it creates all this additional money to pay into the others. And so right now I'm at a 5-year plan. And who knows, it may end up being more like a 7-year plan, but I'm going to call it a 5-year plan, and hopefully get all of these paid off in the next 5 years. And at that point, I'm also looking at other properties, other investments, whatnot. But I'm hesitant to get into anything else that I can't make happen in maybe 7 years. And I'm not only using the money that I make from the properties. So let's break it down to where everybody lives. We all have a car payment.
Yeah.
Everyone has a car payment, right? We don't, most of us, a lot of us don't really, but let's pretend like we do. So my theory is now I won't buy a car if I have to have a car payment. If I can't pay cash, I won't pay it. Buy it. But let's pretend like we all have a car payment. At one point, we have all had a car payment. Mm. We have to make money in order to make that car payment.
Yeah.
So just like we have to make money in order to make a mortgage, why not find a mortgage that works within our budget, our livelihood, and add some money to that like it were a car payment? Or take equivalent to a car payment and go invest it in the stock market or mutual fund or something. And if you had, let's say you have a car payment for 15 years, at the end, you really have probably a car at 300, let's say at $350, you have a car that I could probably find on Craigslist for $5,000. And maybe at one point it was nicer or whatever, but you put so much money into these cars that looked nice at one time, whatever. Had you taken that same amount of money and put it in the stock market, in 15 years, you're going to have over $100,000. And so you just have to, I think it's processing how we work with our money a little differently oftentimes is what we have to do. So if I need to work a little harder to buy some other projects and make them still work in my 7 year, I'll work a little harder.
Yeah. It's funny. I think that it comes down once again to sacrifice again, to like being willing to sacrifice a little bit. Because when I got started in real estate, I bought a 2001 BMW for cash. And basically that allowed me to look like I was successful. But my end goal was for that car not to affect me in qualifying for property. So I didn't want to have a car payment because my income wasn't enough. So it was a sacrifice. I could afford a nicer car. I could have used those $5,000 as a down and got something newer. But sometimes sacrificing that allows you to kind of, especially at the beginning, I think being smart with your money early on in life puts you in a better financial position, because things eventually, you get married, you've got kids, you've got expenses tend to increase over time. So that's one of the advices that my dad gave me back in the day. So what lessons have you learned from like in your journey in real estate? Like what would you say is like maybe like top 2 or 3 like important lessons that maybe you've learned that you can maybe go back to and kind of share with our viewers?
I think one of them is like you're saying, we just keep going back to a sacrifice, being willing to jump quickly. I think oftentimes there's a lot of hesitation with things, and in life, opportunities come. And I believe that everyone, really all of us, probably anyone that even hears this podcast, we've all had opportunities that we can look back and say, had I done this at this point, this would have happened. And there are these big fish stories, right? There's this, oh man, this is great. But why didn't you? So I think I've bought stuff that I saw and agreed to buy it 10 minutes later, and I hadn't seen it. I'd seen a picture of it, or maybe I'd driven by it. But if I didn't agree to buy it within a few minutes, there were too many other offers going or whatever. So knowing where your tolerance is and not being afraid to jump is one thing. Because that's a thing in life. If you're afraid to jump, you're probably just going to work a 9 to 5 for the rest of your life until you work on that. And the other one is just being willing to make sacrifices. I mean, a lot of these projects, I'd go work my normal job, and then I'd come work on these other ones, at night, and enjoying the process. Don't make it feel like work. Make it feel like fun. If you got a girlfriend, a wife, kids, whatever, make it a fun thing. Don't make it feel like, oh, well, when I'm done here at this job, I have to go work and do this other, just because fun, the difference between fun and work is really just how we view it.
Yeah.
It's how we do it and what we call it. So make it fun and make those sacrifices just fun experiences. And it will pay off.
Big time. Yeah. And sometimes you don't realize it until it's actually happened. But I've had those same instances where I'm glad that I bought when I bought, or I bought that when I bought that, even though there was fear, even though there was scaredness, because everybody goes through that. I think it's just being able to put that to the side sometimes and say, what's worst case scenario? All right, worst case scenario is the property's going to pay for itself off. Things might be tight for a little bit. I'll bounce back, and essentially things will continue moving forward, Yeah. Cool, man. What advice could you give viewers on finding opportunities, man? So obviously, you've bought a lot of real estate. Have all of them come from working with real estate agents? Do you sometimes go direct to owner? Do you find them bank-owned properties? What has been your strategy as it relates to that?
I don't know that I've really necessarily had a strategy. I've just kind of kept my eyes open. I just like you would. Some people come home from work and they plan to spend an hour or two in front of the TV. I spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes just looking online, calling a realtor, whatever, Craigslist, anywhere. I'll look anywhere, Zillow, or just driving around, literally 10 minutes. And I was telling Evan this just recently as a friend, a cousin, and I think a friend of yours.
Yeah, good friend.
How do you find places, whatever? And I told him, watch. I said, I haven't been looking the last couple of months. I haven't even been looking. I don't care. I said, but I'm going to put 10 minutes into it for the next week, every day. And I found two. I found one in Los Osos for $2 something. It's a beach town for 200 some grand for a house. And he's like, whoa, my God, how do you find this stuff? It's out there. It's not hidden. There's no specific formula. It's just a matter of, if you drive past a place and you're like, I think that looks okay. Maybe that, call on it. Call on it. So
it's funny because I think that psychologically some people psych themselves out. Being in the business, I get so many clients that are saying, hey, look, the market's going to crash. I'm going to wait until the market crashes. And that's never been my philosophy. My philosophy has always been like, hey, look, there's a good deal in every marketplace. Instead of waiting for the market to crash, just look for a good opportunity. Last year, I bought a property at $312,000. I sold it this year on a 1031 exchange on a down payment for an 11 unit for $560,000. Right. And I know so many people that are just like, no, look, dude, I'm not buying. You can't convince me. I won't even look. But what you're saying is just look, pay attention, keep your eyes open, always be in the market for that good opportunity. And essentially, if you're out there looking, something good will happen. But I think a lot of people check themselves out mentally, saying that the market is high and that there's no good opportunities and that they're going to time the market waiting for it to crash. So I think that sometimes that kind of checks them out from the game.
Right. And I completely agree with you. And I feel like that might be the same group that feels like others have opportunity or privilege. And unfortunately, it's a very large group. I think but we all have the opportunity to decide what our threshold for life is. And I think if some of us just realize that, wake up. It doesn't really matter how old you are. Like I said, I got my first place when I was 21, and I felt like I was already old. I was like, oh my God, I should have got it already. And you know why? Is because the people that I surrounded myself with had already bought their homes. And they made me feel like I was behind the eight. Like, why haven't you done this yet? Now, had I been surrounded myself in a different group where, people are afraid to buy homes, or they're trying to time market, or they say, well, 1 year ago, you could have bought your place for 100 grand less. You better wait for it to fall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have been waiting too long. So it's never, life isn't about waiting for everything to crash down around you and pick up the scraps. Life is about looking for your opportunities. And whether it's real estate, whether it's some kind of other stocks, whether it's a different job, whether it's a different career, whatever it is, don't be afraid of it. Just when you see it, when there's an opportunity, understand an opportunity and never stop looking for an opportunity. When you make over $1 million a year and your living expenses are 10 grand or less a month, then maybe that's the time when opportunity doesn't matter as much and you could just do whatever you want. Until then, what are you doing?
That's awesome, man. Cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the viewers, man?
Here's one thing that I'm just a strong believer in is really not surrounding yourself with a group that is low, that doesn't have your same goals in mind. So oftentimes for some groups that might mean you're 20 years old and the people you're surrounding yourself with are in their mid-30s. Because that just happens to be those people that are aligned with your same goals. Surround yourself with people with the same goals and always keep your eye out for opportunities and be willing to go for it with everything. Be willing to make sacrifices because you're going to make sacrifices regardless. You're either going to be forced to make sacrifices because you weren't willing to make sacrifices earlier on. You're going to be forced to make sacrifices later.
Yeah.
Or you're going to make sacrifices. You're going to get to enjoy that journey because it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Cool, man. Well, this was episode number 54. We had Caleb Lopez, San Luis Obispo. Caleb, if people want to get to know you or people want to reach out to you, maybe for a construction job or kind of just to pick your brain, what would be the best way for them to do that?
You could reach me at calcoastconstruction@gmail.com. And if someone is really interested in getting into this and hasn't bought their first place, or maybe has only bought one place and hasn't bought their second place yet, but is actually just really genuinely interested, reach out to me at calcoastconstruction.com. I'll coach you through this. I've done it a couple of times already with a couple of other people locally. Last year, a couple of different single young females came to me and they were like, we want to buy our own house. And for some reason, they thought that maybe because they were female or because they were young or because they were whatever, that they were going to be at a disadvantage. And I had both of them in a place within 3 months, I think, and spent less than they thought they were going to spend. And they're both already killing it on their places. So.
That's cool, man. All right. Well, thank you so much again. I enjoyed it. Obviously picked up a couple gold nuggets and yeah, let's stay in touch, man.
Very fun. So good talking to you. Thank you for the opportunity.